Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Michael and Matt on the road. I'm in London this week for the Family Life International Conference. And we have the director of the Family Life, FLIonline.com is the name of that website address if anyone wants to visit this great organization in London, which I'm relatively new to. So I wanted to sit down with the director, head of FLI, Greg Clovis, to find out a little more information. Part of this is selfish because I want to form an alliance with these gentlemen who are hard at work over here for pro-life and pro-Catholic causes. So I wanted to introduce you to Mr. Clovis, who's here with us tonight. Greg, how are you?
Hi, very well, Michael.
Thanks for taking time out from your schedule to answer a few questions. I'm a little embarrassed because I should have known much more about your organization over the years than I do. And when you were kind enough to invite me to speak, I've been introduced to this wonderful organization. I find myself thrilled with what I've seen. So if you could just catch obviously we're a little bit behind in the States on what your work is. If you could just catch our listeners and viewers up a little bit. How did this start? How did this great organization get going?
Well, 1997, Father Marks actually came to the UK and he was wanting to set up
Father Paul Marks.
Father Paul Marks,
Yeah.
indeed, yeah.
Oh, okay.
A pro-life, pro-family organization in the UK. He invited me to one of his conferences. I was just blown away by it. He had something like 3,000 people there, and I thought, gosh. So he invited me to set up Human Life International, in fact, in the UK. And the legal name of the organization actually is Human Life International.
Mm-hmm.
So it was born in 97. We had our first conference in 97. So, this was actually our 21st conference. And the end game, as I see it, is a Catholic organization. So we use the church's, if you like, backdrop, its moral teaching, its social teaching, really is what we do. And so the idea really is to articulate the church's authentic teaching on faith, life, and family, really, to Catholics, because Catholics really have no real source of much of this. They won't get it, certainly in the secular media, on the BBC and the such like. Many priests either don't really have either the knowledge or the time to articulate a lot of this. So there's no real source. So the idea really was to set up a platform which would not only encourage young Catholics to come and speak and teach, but it allowed people to actually find somewhere where they can actually hear the church's authentic and teaching, really.
Mm-hmm. And it's been going for 21 years.
21 years, indeed, yes.
No, I think that especially folks who read the Remnant newspaper are going to be very happy to know that you're allied with an old friend of ours, namely Michael Davies, who of course is no longer with us. But you were a close friend of Michael Davies.
Yes, indeed. I knew Michael in my, certainly early 20s. And I used to visit him very regularly. In fact, I think I provided his computer because he used to type. I couldn't believe that he used to type, use a typewriter to write all these books and things. And I said, Michael, have you ever thought about using a computer? And so yeah, we had a computer, so we gave him one, and I showed him how to use it. And at that time, we were using. Gosh, I've forgotten the word package now. It wasn't a Microsoft product. But, I showed him how to use that. And then, yes, it was quite amazing.
I want to interrupt you because this is so funny. I remember years and years ago talking to him. He must have been talking about you. Someone back home who was teaching him how to use a computer. And what he was confused about was how to use a mouse. He said he wanted to be able to figure out how to use the mouse. So I think he must have eventually caught him up on how to use a mouse. Well, that's great. So Michael had at least a little bit of impact then, or influence on your decision to pursue this organization.
Yes, indeed. And he was very, very encouraging. He helped us a great deal, really. He spoke at our second conference. He gave a brilliant talk, and I still listen to it now. I think after he gave it, for about 3 weeks after, I just listened to this talk over and over again. It's the depth, the knowledge, incredibly impressive. When you meet him, when you met Michael, you would never think that he had written all these books. He gives these lectures. You would never so connected to, because he was just so a regular guy, so a guy you would,
Yeah.
So Michael is always a credible, for me, a credible person.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, just a side note, when we were young, and he would be just as apt to be talking about Mickey Mouse as
right.
Edmund Campion. He
Right.
had a working knowledge of it all, so
Right.
I think he did have an impact on us.
I used to ask him, so how did you, how do you, and somehow it just came naturally to him. He just read everything there was to read, and and it was, it's
I wonder if just another aside. Do you remember how he used to? He would share his knowledge with you in a way that made you feel like everyone in the room was basically at the same level,
Yeah.
and we were just having a conversation.
Absolutely.
He never tried to dictate or make you feel embarrassed for what you didn't know.
That's
and I
right.
think that was one of the beautiful things about Mike.
That's right. That's right. Father Thwaites also had that same gift, and that's quite a profound gift to speak to you at your level, to articulate ideas, knowledge, history, as if we're equal level.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful gift.
It was
Yes.
beautiful. It inspired a lot of people.
Yes,
I think
yes.
it did. So tell me something. Now you're mentioning that you even had the great Michael Davies speaking at your conferences. You've had some pretty controversial people speak. Controversial, by today's standards. They're basically just Catholic, obviously, but yet you seem to fly under the radar a little bit in terms of I don't hear about you getting in a lot of trouble. How do you do that? How do you do so much great work and stay out of the crosshairs?
That's interesting actually, because we have had some difficulties there. We had one or two speakers where they simply weren't allowed by the authorities to speak at the conferences. But I think I suspect that our bishops actually quite like the idea of maybe us doing this work, because then it's not a problem for them. They can say, well, they have nothing to do with us. They're an independent organization. And to some degree, we're not incorporated, if you like, in the church. So the church can't tell us who we can have speak, or they can't dictate things. So I suppose that gives us a certain amount of independence, and we purposely did that because I do know of other organizations which have come unstuck unless they toe the line. And I think it's really very important that ordinary Catholics can learn about things like Humanae Vitae. They can learn why the Church disagrees with things like same-sex marriage or abortion or birth control. Mm-hmm. They can understand really the Church's authentic teaching on sex instruction and sex education by schools and secular organizations. They can understand the Church's view on population control. None of that is articulated really, apart from the secular media, who always give a very dishonest, I would say, certainly a secular view, the view which clearly is at odds with Church's teaching. So our whole drive really is to provide platforms where Catholics can at least know what the Church teaches. It gives it a Catholic, authentic Catholic view of these topics.
Well, it's interesting too, because I noticed at your conference this weekend, you had the remnant there, and you had some very known for traditionalists, liturgical tradition, and everything else. The defense of the kingship of Christ, but you also had Rachel from Rachel's Vineyard there, so you had a very strong pro-life contingency that was really very useful to people, I think, in Q&A and so forth. So maybe that's part of it. It seems to me you're trying to provide the whole package. You don't want to be isolated or pigeonholed into a little section. Your whole thing is the Catholic
Indeed.
teaching.
Indeed, that's very much so for us. Even when we have non-Catholics speak, we say to them beforehand, look, this is a Catholic conference. You cannot say anything which is contrary to the teaching. Just simply not going to happen. So that's very, very important to us. It's and the things that worked well. We get a lot of support. Maybe not as much as we would certainly like. These things are very difficult. And in the UK, we don't have the culture of going to conferences. We don't have the culture of doing these things. And so it's been a long battle, just trying to encourage more and more people to come along and listen to some of these great speakers.
I noticed also that you oftentimes you don't see with real strong pro-life action, which is what you're doing. You also have the traditional Latin Mass at your conference, which I was overjoyed to see that, because we don't see that necessarily coupled together very much. But I sensed in your quite a sizable group of people that showed up for your conference, they were glad to see the Latin Mass. It wasn't divisive at all. In fact, it seemed like the majority of people were very happy to see it.
Yes.
And yet we also had conversations about life and family and all of that. What motivated you to say, the Latin Mass is also something that
We certainly in the early days we usually had two masses. We'd have the Latin Mass and we'd have the Novus Ordo as well. Now we're just down to one day in running these events. Obviously it's much more difficult to do that. So we don't always have, because sometimes we don't have the control of the conference in that regard. That's to say, when we run it, for instance, in a cathedral, we'd have to use the cathedral church, and we have to just go along with whatever mass is there. We were fortunate this year because we had a chapel within the school, so we could actually do that. But what's quite interesting is, after the mass, quite a number of young people came up to the priests and said, "Where can I get a mass like this? Which parish do you come from?" Because it was the first time these young people, the first time they had seen the Latin Mass, So that was really encouraging. That was really, really encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I noticed the same thing. There were so many young people there. I know you've got other things to do, and I'm taking your time, but I wanted to. Is there anything that we can do? I mean, I've never done this before. When I'm a guest invited to speak at a conference, when my turn is done, I'm done. I'm sitting down. But I actually got out of my chair and grabbed the microphone out of your brother's hand at the end of your conference. I want to help you people. I mean, I was that impressed by the people who were there, by the spirit that was there, by the young people that were there. So I'm sure once people start finding out and maybe hearing some of your talks, they're going to want to support you. Is there anything we can do from the States to, not only form an alliance, but maybe help with some projects? Or?
Well, one of the things we've done is to launch a new magazine. I have a copy of it. I'll get it in a second. But the idea really is to set up more platforms and encourage more speakers, more writers, people who actually want to get involved in the whole, not only pro-life, pro-family movements, who want to try and restore the faith, certainly in our country and abroad. And I see a lot more young people wanting to do that. So really, people are interested in writing articles from this perspective, from a much more traditional perspective. You have stories in any of these areas. We'd be really interested in them. If you want to be able to help, physically, let's say, help us in the conferences. If you'd like a conference in your particular area, contact us, and if we can arrange it, we know we'll actually move. In fact, from this conference, I got a call today actually, asking whether we could run a conference in Portsmouth. So we can do that. We can actually organize that kind of thing. Those sort of things would be really, really grateful. Certainly, all we are primarily a voluntary organization. So certainly, any help, whether it be financial or spiritual, prayers, anything really, all of this really, really helps. So yeah.
Okay, great. And they can go to flionline.com. .org.
Yes.
Okay, .org. Okay.
Online.org.
And right away, I'm going to volunteer to run the website. If you will do us the favor, when something is coming up, send us press releases so our people can make sure to keep up with what you're doing.
In fact, we must put our link, or your
Absolutely.
website as a link on our site.
Absolutely. I'm going to embarrass you as we go out here by pointing out that you put your money where your mouth is. You've got 10 children.
That's
and
right.
Most of your children were running around. I mean, we're talking about adult, very capable. Most of them are adults now, running around that conference and making that conference hum. I mean, that was a beautifully done conference. So that, of course, that's near and dear to my heart, because I think the family apostolate really shows that this is near and dear to your heart.
We really couldn't have run this with, if it was just myself and my wife, maybe one or two kids, really couldn't have done this. We 21 years. So when we first started running this, our oldest was probably 15 years old, and I remember him running the registration table for us, and all the other kids running about doing things. And every year it was, the mailing, stacking letters and putting stamps on and dressing and stuff like that. And so that whole culture sort of built up over the last 20 years, which, the kids tell me now, they actually become quite entrepreneurs. They started their own company themselves, and simply because they were engaged in the family in this regard. This is the great thing about having a large family, and it's a shame today people tend to have one or two children. Yeah. It's crazy because actually the first two are the most difficult. After that, it's all downhill. Mm-hmm. And somehow I think people sort of struggle with two, and they say, we couldn't possibly have any more. It's just too difficult. Mm-hmm. And they realize that the first two were the training. That you've done the training now. Now it's all downhill. Yeah. And they never go to that level, which is great. But yeah, we're blessed with 10 wonderful children. One of them is a priest, which is wonderful. Another is now going, he thinks he has a vocation, and he's hopefully going for the priesthood himself. It's great.
Yeah, it really is great. It really, and I can't agree with you more. I mean, I only have 7, so I'm sorry. I apologize. I only have 7 children. But yeah, the family apostolate, as you said, God is good when we're in a position to be able to serve Him and to be with our families and fight for the kingdom of Christ.
And the thing about it is, and again, what we don't realize, we become so much better people because of the children. The experience you have, the experience I have, you can't buy that. Being able to manage people, being able to form people and educate them, to nurture them. That you could go on any training course until you're actually doing it. And people simply don't realize that. I'm a much better person for it. For me, it's a great blessing.
It's all about family.
It is very much about family, and we live close together. We're engaged with each other. If one needs help, we're there. My father's with us at present. We support him. He supports us. I support my own children, and I support our grandchildren. I teach, for instance, all our grandchildren are currently homeschooled. I teach maths and science to them. This really helps. And again, this is the problem with our secular society, the society which says birth control is necessary, abortion is necessary. These things, it impoverishes our society. And with the thing about birth control, this is one of the things I tell couples particularly. The woman thinks that she's more independent, she can do more. In fact, the reality is that men are significantly impoverished. I see men, who are really adolescents. They give no commitment. They continue, playing computer games into their 40s. They spend hours doing things like that. They never really take, the bits by the horn. They really never achieve very, very much. If you think about it, maybe a couple of generations ago, men used to go down the mines. They would be there for 12 hours. They would work their hearts out, really, to provide for their family. Now it's, I think us men do so much better, when we're challenged. Yeah. We take a vow, to our wives that we would take and care, and to our children, we do that, and we work, really, we actually are driven. But when there's no challenge, because maybe there's no children, or there's one child who's grown up and is left home, we really don't, I don't think we flourish. We don't do the best really we can.
Yeah, I mean, if our sense of responsibility breaks down at that level to the point where you could father a child and just walk away, or just have the woman take care of that little problem, obviously we're fatally flawed now as men. And you wonder, where are the feminists? I mean, they think this was good for women to do this to men and to women. It's like the whole adoption for homosexual couples. Where are the feminists there? You don't need a mother anymore to raise a child, and 2 men do this. So none of this makes any sense. But of course, we could talk about this all day. But your organization, I'm listening to you talking about abortion, you're talking about pro-life, you're talking all of a sudden homeschooling slips in. I can't find anything to disagree with you with. So I hope that this is the beginning of a good alliance.
Yes, indeed.
Congratulations. God bless you on this work, and it's an honor for me to be with you and to see how you.
And it's great. It's great to meet you. I've been seeing you on obviously on the computer, watching the Remnants TV, and I've always said, great, one day when they will meet.
Yeah. Well, here we are.
So it's absolutely.
Yeah. Here's to keep continuing to work in the future.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay. Thanks very much. So I'm Michael Matt with Greg Clovis here at the Family Life International headquarters, I guess we're at. And you'll be hearing a lot more from Mr. Clovis, I hope, and we'll be doing a lot of reporting on his recent big-time success here in London, the Pro-Life, Pro-Family Conference that he just closed a couple days ago. We will be reporting more on that, Remnant TV and in Remnant Newspaper, so keep an eye on remnantnewspaper.com for updates on that. Thanks very much. I'm Michael Matt in London, and we'll see you next week.